What up, everybody? It's your boy, Tim Castleman, coming to you live. Not really, not live at all. Coming to you live and direct with my co-host, the Sometimes Sue. We'll refer to her on here, right?
Yeah, Sometimes Sue.
Sometimes
yes.
Sue, because sometimes she'll be here, sometimes she won't, sometimes she'll comment, sometimes I'll just blabber the whole time, and she'll be like, I didn't really get to say much on that topic because you covered it so well, which I think is a nice way of being
happens every episode, Tim, as we well know.
Which I think is just a nice way of saying, hey, you talk too fucking much, so I didn't say anything. Yeah. And also, you know, as we continue to roll with this podcast, I want to be clear, like, not every episode is going to be, like, thematic, you know? I'm not going to be like, today we're going to talk about it. It's like, a lot of stuff is just going to be what's going on in life, what's going on in the world. You know, this isn't current events or gossipy or anything like that, but if something catches my eye, I'll definitely bring it to your attention, but I don't want you to think like, you know, today's episode is on love. Be like, oh, I don't want to hear that. Sometimes we'll have thematic episodes. Sometimes I'll just tell you what goes on. As I stated in the last or a previous podcast, you know, but I want to mention it here just to keep it all universal in one and independent, each podcast independent of the other one. My big goal this year is to be able to go away from work for multiple days or weeks at a time and, quote, fill my well up with new experiences, new ideas, new information, then come back to the podcast, drain that well of information into the podcast, and then, you know, go back out and fill it up again. So with that in mind, we had a wonderful evening last night. We got to go meet with a friend that lives here locally in Las Vegas, and we got to meet her very fun and very charming.
Very charming.
Such a sweet
Makes me
kid.
want to have kids all over again.
I mean, I don't know a smarter kid. I mean, if I was 1/10 as smart as this kid at my current age,
Yes.
as this kid is at his age, I mean, it was
I
just
agree.
amazing.
I was like, how do you know this stuff? You know?
YouTube will teach you anything.
Yeah.
He literally was talking. I mean, this kid is under 10. I don't want to say too much, you know, because I didn't ask permission to be like, hey, is it okay if I talk about your kid on the podcast? But, I mean, he's under 10, and he's, like, telling us about credit card offers.
Exactly.
And what credit cards we should have and,
Yep.
you know, things like that.
What the government's doing.
What the government, yeah, right, yeah.
I'm like,
And
okay.
I've always heard that kids are like human tape recorders, but I could definitely see his mother's mannerisms in the son,
Yes.
you know, much
Yep.
like people tell me, hey, you know, yeah, I can definitely tell you're Darlene's son, the way you talk, the way you know, all those things. So, but what I really wanted to talk about was, and I don't even know how to, let's start at the beginning, okay? So this friend that we went and had dinner with last night, a couple of years back, ran into, like we all do, some business ups and downs and was trying to go in a different direction and needed a little assistance. And look, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to friends to help. I think that's what you should do. You absolutely should reach out if you need assistance. And if you're a friend and in a position where you can help, I think it's not criminal not to help somebody, but it's pretty shitty if if you've got the golden goose and you keep all the eggs. I guess is the way I would determine it, right? So they need a little assistance financially, and I got a call when I was overseas because I'm a baller. No, I was over there speaking at an event, and they needed a check, and this is someone that I had I mean, like, we were acquaintances. We weren't really, like, super deep friends or anything like that, but we knew of each other. We've had some interactions, all positive. And I was like, yeah, hey, you know what? You need help. I've got the funds at that time. Before life had its way with me, I had the funds to help you out. So, you know, I basically wire this money. I have to call my bank and be like, hey, look, I know I've never talked to you as my personal banker before, but I need to wire transfer this random person you don't even know money for their situation. And the guy's like, hey, are you blink once if you're being kidnapped, dial into the phone. He's like, hit a button on the phone if you're being distressed or something and you can't talk about it out loud. I'm like, okay, cool. And it wasn't a case like that. And I was happy to do that. And to be clear, the second things rebounded very quickly, I will also admit, for them, I got paid back 100% whole. So that's not the whole people suck in terms of, I lent people money and they never got paid back, which we all have done. I've done, and I've also given money with no expectations in return. If I loan money out to a friend, I don't ever expect that money to come back unless we say it's a loan. But most of the time, I just gift it to them. I had another friend major health issues, major health drama, had to take some time off work, did not have any time available out at work to take off, I sent him a check to kind of help get it through, but I was clear. I was like, hey, this is a gift, not a loan. I don't want the money back. I don't expect it. And I
nice of
did
you,
that.
Tim.
Well, I did that for two reasons. One, I didn't want there to be that drama.
Right.
But two, I've loaned money to people before. They've never paid me back a dime, and then they make it awkward by not coming around.
Well, that's true.
Because
yeah.
they,
Because
so
they know. Yeah.
yeah, or no, they think, hey, every time I talk to Tim, he's going to be like, by the way, we got an outstanding balance, and it's like, hey, we were friends before this. Like, maybe I don't give you more money, but we can still be friends about it.
absolutely.
Now, if I'd given $20,000 and not gotten back, that'd be a totally different situation, right? But we're talking about a few $100 here, So do the money, gets paid back. We still are communicating, talking. I decide that I want to make a trip to Vegas out at the beginning of the year because that's what you do when you're trying to be productive and have hit the ground running in 2022 is you go to Vegas for an entire week and stay at Resort World and watch the sunrise and set from your hotel room, right? They live out in Las Vegas. So I was like, hey, I'm going to come see you while I'm in Vegas. Here's a month warning. Here's a warning the week before. And then the week of, nothing. Then the next day, hey, when are you coming to town? And it's like, yeah, I've been here for 2 days. Then the next day, well, I've got family issues. I can't, I can't really make it during the day. Like you'd like to, let's go to dinner. And then we go to dinner and we have a wonderful dinner. I don't want to besmirch that at all, right? You can thank my lawyer for the word besmirch because he was like, Mr. Castleman, we cannot besmirch the judge. And I was like, that judge can suck my dick from the back, to quote a friend of mine. He was like, that would be an example of besmirching. But
That's your word of the day, folks.
That's the word.
Besmirch.
Besmirch. I don't use it in a sentence besides that. Yeah. So we have dinner, but dinner isn't about business at all. The focus of the dinner wasn't any. It was like, hey, I came out. I left that dinner incredibly frustrated. So frustrated, obviously, I can't even talk about it because it was like, hey, I came out to Vegas. You're the only person that I'm here to see. And to be clear, like this was a restaurant that we were going to. This was not a romantic interest or, this is 100% strictly personal. I learned very early in my career, and I'm not saying I've always been perfect with this, but, you try not to shit where you eat. It's like, yeah, don't screw up your work life and your personal life. Don't intermingle those and all that stuff. So I guess I just left very frustrated from that dinner because it's like, hey, I came to see you. You're the only person I'm here to see. I've tried repeatedly to meet up with you. Then we meet up and it's like, we don't talk about business. We don't talk about the things, anything, that I was hoping that we could get to that comment of like, hey, how are things going? Brainstorm, mastermind, all that stuff. And that's how I ended the night last night. I was pissed off and I was grumpy and like, oh man, this sucks. I can't believe it. I loaned this person money. How dare they, not make their schedule available to me when I'm in Las Vegas. And then I slept on it. And then I started waking up this morning and started thinking about it. It's like, well, what do people really owe you in life? Again, this person borrowed money from me. They paid me back, right? And that's the end of the obligation for that experience. Whereas for me, I was thinking, okay, well, by doing a good deed here, that would obligate me or obligate them really, to be open and available to meet, to talk about the things I wanted to talk about on the schedule that I wanted to talk about. So, I know where that comes from, by the way. That comes from my upbringing. Like, I love my parents to death. They're amazing. They've done so many great things for me. But, anything I've been given, I don't want to say anything. A majority of what I've been given in life has come with strings attached to it. And I also think, I love Dan Kennedy. He's one of my greatest mentors in the internet and online space. But he is big on reminding his clients constantly of like, hey, remember when we closed that 5,000, of constantly reminding like, hey, remember the things we accomplished? Mm-hmm. And he does so in a way that makes them feel like obligated. Like, well, I kind of have to stick with Dan because look at all that he's done for me,
Right.
So I don't know. It's something that I'm still thinking about, and that's the other thing I want to share about this podcast. Like I used to journal a ton, and we can talk about that on a different podcast sometime. But I really record these podcasts sometimes as free therapy sessions, and more importantly, to figure out how I think in real time. Because last night, if I had recorded this podcast, it'd be a totally different thing than having 24 hours to kind of reflect on it. But I don't know, Sue. Maybe that's just a unique experience I had as a child. But it just, what are your thoughts in general as far as trying to manage expectations? Because, we talked about this a little bit, this week. It's like, I think people suck. In my brain,
Yes.
people suck. I mean, I had an old acquaintance where their business was like nosedive failing. I bought into the said business. We pulled that thing out of a nosedive, and the second we did, it was like, I need you to get the fuck away from me as far as possible, and it ended the friendship and ended the business relationship, and I haven't spoke to that person since. But you're like, well, wait a minute, I bailed this thing out. I did this thing for you. Now, when I need help, and I also think that's another thing. I've got a great friend, Jake. He's an awesome dude. Hopefully, he listens to this podcast. He's a gift giver, so he gives very thoughtful, very well thought out gifts. No one else does in his family. So he's always disappointed, He'd be like, oh, my wife mentioned this in passing 2 years ago, and I found the exact thing, and I got it to her.
What a guy.
And his wife's like, I got you some socks and some underwear, and they're not your size or color, but I hope you like them. And he's just like, what the fuck? So I think managing expectations is a big thing for me, and maybe it is for you. I gave a talk, and I've given it twice, once in London and once in Spain, which was basically, once in London, once in Italy, was basically like your work associates aren't your friends. And I've said this in the previous podcast. Another guy that I hung out with, him and his wife, we'd vacation on a yearly basis with my wife at the time and me. And I thought we were generally friends. Every outside appearance was we were friends. This is I noticed some familiar patterns here. It's the only couple I'd ever vacationed with as a couple outside of internet space. It was someone that we called on a regular basis. We talked like we were involved in each other's life. And then because I didn't post a photo of the book on social media, it was like when my wife left me, I didn't deserve to be contacted and consoled.
That's crazy, Tim.
And being on that side of it, it's like, it's a perfect example of managing your expectations maybe from that person's point of view. Now, I don't know all the stuff behind it, but it's kind of weird to be like, hey, this guy that we vacation with, he didn't post a photo of him with my book, and because of that thing, I'm no longer going to associate with him. It seems like a weird thing of like, well, does he have that expectation? And again, I look at that situation of, hey, I mailed my list twice with no affiliate link, so I made no money on those, which is fine because you're my friend and I want to help you. And I'm going to go above and beyond like I normally do. And then to be like, well, you didn't help enough, and as a result of that. So it goes both ways, okay? I've definitely been on both sides of this, and I don't have it figured out, and that's why I'm sharing it with the world before anybody else, because I feel like the best way to figure out your life's problems is to ask the internet to comment and think.
Yes, what say you, internet?
Yeah, because
please comment below this link.
It's always the rational people that
Yes.
respond to that. Well, Bill Gates takes an hour out of his day every day to go through YouTube comments and respond in thoughtful, well thought out answers. But yeah, it's just what do you think is not a healthier way, but a healthy way to manage your expectations of others to where you're just not constantly disappointed? Because again, I look at it like if I'm the one that's constantly or regularly disappointed in other people's not contact, but other people's actions or whatever it may be, I'm the only consistent in that, in all those relationships. So clearly,
I can't blame
you
you for being disappointed because I also struggle with that, I mean, other than, what are you going to do? Let go of it, I suppose, clearly. But even if, like you say, business, so you get your business relationships and then your friend relationships, to me, it's almost, it should be somewhat the same, and I get it, but when you're friends, yet your business relationships, like the example you put out, you guys were clearly friends. I feel like you surpassed that business thing. You could go on a vacation together, there was clearly a friend relationship there.
Right, yeah,
you know?
and that's why I did what I did for them, and that's why I
Right.
did that for my friend here. What I don't want to see in the comment section or emails like, "Hey, bro, loan me $20K. I'll talk to you anytime you
I'll
want."
be your
right?
friend, Tim.
Yeah. Those are called sugar babies. Right, yeah. If I wanted to do that, there's a lot more people I'd give the money for with a lot more expectations. But yeah, no,
But I think just being disappointed in that is normal. Maybe I'm also struggle with that, but I think that's normal. That's a normal thing to feel.
well, I think some people would go with, well, Tim, you're supposed to give without any expectation in return, and I do
I get that. Yes.
to a point, right? But it just, if my bank gives me money, they don't give it to me with no expectation of return. They charge me interest on it,
Yes.
and if I don't pay, they can take the shit away from me,
Right.
But at the end of the loan, I'm not obligated to Bank of America. It's like, hey, I fulfilled the terms of my loan. We're done here in this business arrangement. I think
Yes.
what is true is it gets tricky when it's not just cut and dry, black and white business.
Right. Well, I'd like to hear, like you said, like if people want to comment, has that ever happened to you? I'm trying to think if that's ever happened to me. I know there's been times where, again, I struggle with that, why aren't they getting back to me? Not that I've done the money loaning thing
Right.
necessarily, but
And I want to be clear, it's not, guys, even though I brought up some money examples, it's
Yeah.
not always...
it's not always about money.
It's not money. I mean, my
For
friend's
sure.
situation, it wasn't about money at all. It was
Right.
just like, bro, I went to bat for you. I need you here.
Right.
I had another friend when my ex decided to, fucking skedaddle and abandon our marriage. This is a dude that I was hanging out with 6-7 times a week, and then it was like he was doing this program through the church. Okay, no. I don't want no strife. I don't want no smoke with Jesus, but he was doing it through the church where he was like, I'm not going to hang out. I'm not going to call. And he just basically went on that. And I'm over here fucking struggling with like, okay, I've lost my wife and my quasi best friend who I considered like a brother who I hung out with
Right.
every night. So, people are like, Tim, why are you such a shut-in? It's like, well, let me see here. I didn't really have a social life beforehand. I didn't really have a big group of friends. I didn't have a social circle. I didn't, and those things are all on me, but it's like I lost my one person that I hung out with every day, my ex-wife, and then my best friend, to the point that I finally had to hit him up because I wasn't responding to his calls. And he's like, hey, what's going on? And I just told him, I said, dude, I think you failed me here, and we
Yeah.
worked through it, and we, he apologized, and hey, I thought you wanted X, turns out you wanted Y, my bad, But I think also for me, I had to go back and say, okay, well, this isn't someone that I can depend on the level that I thought that I could. And no shade on that, okay? Because like I value connection with people more than almost anything. I want to feel connected. It's like I want to meet somebody, and then the next day I'm like, we're best friends. We're getting matching tattoos. I immediately want to go deep. I don't want to do this surface level fucking talk. And
Google's
maybe that's
tattoo shop in
Yeah.
Vegas.
Well, it's like it's like last night. I wanted to talk. Hey, Howard. I wanted to get deep into the conversation.
Sure, I felt the same way.
Not surface level.
Right.
Like how's the weather?
Yeah.
But you have to understand, not everybody's like that. So my biggest problem was that I would automatically meet someone and be like, all right, well, we're best friends, and treat them at that, close, intimate level, when in reality is, one, that's unhealthy. You can't have a million best friends, right? Two, you probably have a handful of friends you can really depend on, but there are levels to this game, and
Right.
levels to this shit. So one thing I had to do, thanks to therapy, and this is actually another thing I learned from Dan Sullivan. So now we're up to 3 things for 16,000 for Dan Sullivan. So
Yes.
that's 4, 8, 12. That's about what, 5? It's about $533 for the 3 tools I can remember. But he basically had levels. I think this was in relationship to employees of like 1 to 4, and their skill level, access level, blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, blah. So I started having to do that, and not like formally sitting down and go, okay, Sue, you're a 3 out of 4, but just
Damn
going
it.
saying, okay, well, what do these things look like to
Right.
me. And this is a lot of me having to grow as a person. And I don't mind sharing this shit because hopefully it helps. But I'll also freely admit it's embarrassing. Like, it's embarrassing that I have to go and learn how to have healthy relationships at age 42. I'm still trying to figure it out of like, well, how do I meet their needs, my needs, and not get disappointed in the process? So in the instance I just mentioned with my friend there, to me, that's a guy I refer to as like my brother, So he was a 4. Well, okay. Those actions, is he really a 4? I mean, is this guy really going to come to me, the same dude, love him to death. I'm sure he'll listen to this podcast and we'll have yet another spirited conversation. But, he ran into some tax issues with the IRS. I didn't give money on this instance, but he spent a whole year about it, was going to sell his business and do all these things. And I stepped in and go, hey, man, don't sell your business. Don't do all this, But yet when I talk about my bankruptcy stuff, he's like, bro, you got to get over it, And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, what, do you remember when you had to be picked up by people because you were too stressed out to drive,
Okay.
But yet when it was my turn to be like, fuck, this fucking sucks. It's like, bro, get over it. It's like, well, wait a minute. Hold on. Why was your situation worthy of everyone? But my situation is like, oh, dude, move on, move on with it. So, I think it's important to like I said, I think it's important to manage expectations. For me, it's about just going, okay, well, I think this is where this person is at, and it's fine. If they're a level 2, and I hate the level thing, but if they're just an acquaintance,
it makes sense, yeah.
If they're just an acquaintance and they're happy with that and they don't want to go up, you're the only one that's going to get upset. It's like
That's
if
true.
somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Right.
I remember my ex-girlfriend, wonderful woman, right, told me at the very beginning, I'm a hot mess, right? I should have fucking listened.
Is that on day 1, like your first date?
I mean, it was very early on in the
Yep.
relationship. And,
Okay.
you're thinking with the little head, and you're also thinking like, no, boo,
No,
you're going to be
not.
different with me. No, you're not. That's just cute how you light shit on fire and torch everything to the ground, hypothetically, of course, right? So, yeah, I don't know the best way to manage expectations. And, I mean, do I have a right to be upset about, hey, I fucking went to bat for you. Imagine you're going home. I guess this is a different example, but maybe you got a best friend back home. And you're like, hey, Bobby, I'm coming back home for Christmas break, and, for Christmas, I'd love to see you. You tell them at 3 months, you tell them, and then it's like the day you get there, they're like, well, dude, I could probably meet you for like 15 minutes, somewhere.
Yeah,
and you're
Dunkin'
like,
Donuts,
you're like,
grab a
what?
coffee.
Yeah. With 4 kids and,
Right.
wife that's like, honey, we have to go. We got to,
Yeah.
it's like, so I don't know. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts, comments, and feedback on this episode, and maybe your experiences, and if you've got an idea that's been helpful to you. Like again, guys, I'm not coming to you from the top of the mountain going, I've got all my life and shit figured out. I'm coming to you from the bottom of the mountain, going, look what life has done, and look what has happened to me, and here's how we're getting over those things, recovering from those things, learning from those things, processing those things, and trying to have a better and healthy outlook on life, because I don't want to believe that a majority of the world sucks, We were talking about this before the podcast. There's a dentist in my hometown that just got sentenced to 30 years on one count of 16 of production and exploitation of child pornography. Now, this is a guy that was in the community. He was, and you hear that, like Joe Paterno and the Sandusky case back in Penn State days, and something else that was a personal kick to the balls to me. I was in the military. Okay, I was in the Air Force, not technically the military, but they did let us see guns and we saw planes and stuff. I was an administrative assistant. I was joking with someone the other day. I was like, thank you for your service. You're a hero. It's like, I made coffee for like colonels, like calm down. Like, I typed up the church bulletin. I wasn't exactly hunting down Osama bin Laden with SEAL Team 6 type, I didn't storm the beaches of Normandy. Let's relax on that hero talk. But the one guy that I loved working for, and he was a chaplain. He was a Catholic priest, and I know what you're thinking, and get your mind out of there because that's not exactly what happened. But he was a good dude. Really enjoyed working for him. Humble, servant of the Lord, like a guy that made me want to be Catholic. He was so good. I was just like, dude, I'm not religious at all, but if this is what Catholicism is, if you're the representation of Catholicism, like I'm all for it. Well, he retires. Come to find out 10 years after he's retired, I don't have any contact or anything with him and stuff like that. Turns out the whole reason he went in the military, allegedly, supposedly, is because he was being brought up on sexual abuse child sexual abuse charges, joined the military, and has basically spent the last 20 years running from the law, to the point that he's not even in the chaplaincy anymore, not even in the military. I mean, I believe he's retired, full retirement from the military, but he's married, has a wife now, and last I heard, was somewhere in Mexico, like not New Mexico, like the country Mexico. So, you just think somebody, and they turn out to be disappointing, like, and stuff like that. And it reminds me of when I first got into concert photography. By the way, I've talked about photography. I don't think I ever told you guys what I did. I just, concert photography. That's all I've done. Taken over 200,000 photos of concerts. There was there is an artist. Her name is Kylie Ray Harris. Mm-hmm. I never met Kylie Ray. I didn't know shit about her. But one day, Kylie Ray is at a music festival, gets drunk 3 times the legal limit, is driving 90 plus miles an hour, is behind a car, tries to go around the car, clips the car. That sends her into oncoming traffic where she hits a 16-year-old girl on the way home from volunteering or school or whatever, kills both of them.
Wow. That's
dad,
terrible. Okay, didn't know about that.
The dad is the fire chief of the town where the accident occurred. So guess who got to respond to the accident?
Oh, how horrible.
Right. So I don't know her at all. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this chick is trash. Fuck her. Fuck what she stands for. And when it came out that she was 3 times the legal limit, I was like, I can't be associated with anybody that fucks with this bitch. And I was the asshole. People were mad at me.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. There are major artists, Caitlin Butts, right? And that's, yeah. And Caitlin, if you're listening to this, that's the biggest compliment you're ever going to get to me, is referring to you as a major artist instead of Flatland Calvary's permanent opener due to marriage, right? But yeah, she fucking hates my guts because, and people still sing her songs, and like they did a big GoFundMe, but to raise money for the musician's funeral. And then when it came out like a day later of, oh shit, looks like this musician was at fault and all the other, right. Then it was like, well, now let's start raising money for the little girl, But there are still people that still praise her every day. So that's what my opinion was, right?
Right.
Let's talk about 5 years later now. Now, I've had some friends get DUIs. Didn't kill anybody, but still did something really stupid. Do you penalize and hate them forever? Or do you hate the sin, but love the sinner, as they teach in church? And also understand that these last few days of Kylie Ray Harris, or this last day of Kylie Ray Harris's life, wasn't who she was as a total person. Yes, she struggled with alcohol. Yes, she had her demons. Yep. We all do. I'm not, I'm not here again casting stones from on high. What I will tell you though is I just had to understand that one aspect of their life isn't who they are whole, and because all these other people had these great, encouraging, amazing experiences with it, that's what they reflected on during that time versus what I reflected on, which is the DUI. But also, it's like, going back to this dentist example that we talked about. Are there people out in the community that are like, oh, I knew Jason White. He's a great dude, I mean, yeah. I mean, he did have sex with children underage and film it and distribute it and all that stuff. But he's a great dude. So it's like, where do you draw the line on that? And what's interesting is music sites, a few of them, have foolishly, in my opinion, like commemorated her death. Like Kylie Ray Harris's death. I know I'm all over the place, but so when it's like, hey, today's the anniversary of the passing. Well, if you look at the comments there, people have Google. They type her name into Google. If you type Kylie Ray Harrison, everything you're going to find about her on the first 2 pages are all about her accident.
Right.
And people are like, wait, I'm sorry, you're memorializing this fucking person that killed a 16-year-old girl? Like, this is trash. Take it down, take it down, take it down. So it's a weird, it's a weird, it's a weird dynamic. I don't know what you have the right to feel in that situation or the right to think or the right, I don't know where you fall on that. But again, seeing some of my friends go through something and it's like, well, I love that person in spite of the thing or despite this thing. I don't know. I don't know how that, where's the line where you cut that off? Where you go, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
what
is
they
the
did
line
was,
on like killing somebody? Is that the line?
well,
And,
look
like,
at what was that performer over in England? Jimmy Savile, I believe his name is. He was a BBC like Top of the Pops. Like he was a well-known broadcaster and did a bunch of shit with children and all that
Yep.
stuff. Come to find out, the largest child sex predator in Britain history
I did
after
not
his
know
death.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
You look at Bill Cosby, right?
Yeah.
Great
Well,
comedian.
that's a great example.
A great
Yep.
comedian.
Right.
Had the Cosby Show, which had all black actors in the 80s when that
Yep.
was like not happening. It wasn't a typical like black rom-com, where they
Right.
try to do stereotypes. It was like he was a doctor, they were professionals, all,
Yep.
had Fat Albert, all these things. He is the largest serial rapist, I believe, ever convicted. And I mean, how many charges did they say? How many accusers did he have? I mean, I'd have to look.
Yeah,
but
I would too. It was a lot.
was it north of
Yeah.
50, I feel like?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, whatever the number was, it was substantial that he was, convicted and sentenced to jail for some of his crimes. But it's just, again, you think you know somebody and do that.
Yep.
Now, you'll still hear comedians say, hey, terrible dude, but best comedian I ever saw perform live. So it's like, do you compartmentalize and go, hey, as a mother, this person was amazing? Or do you go,
Yeah.
do you throw the baby out with the bathwater, type thing?
That's a good point. I mean, for me, it's more about what they did, I suppose. I mean, like the child pornography thing, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the big- it's a big deal.
Before you drag me and try to cancel me, like so many other people before you. Also, what are you going to cancel? This is a free podcast that I'm recording in a hotel room, right? Like there are no sponsors. I pay to have this thing hosted. What exactly are you going to cancel? My Amex bill that pays for this, right? Are you going to drag me to my boss, which is also
Right.
me? Are you going to tell people that I'm a horrible person? I mean, do you think you can really say worse things about me than my exes? Like, come on now. There are obviously horrible instances that anything having to do with children,
Yes.
things like that. I mean, there's a popular DJ in Dallas. He had like not his version of Toys for Tots every year, and it was like a national thing. And he was a big time radio personality in Dallas.
Yep.
Come to find out, his daughter would have sleepovers, and he'd take one of the girls off to the side. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think his last one was this girl was like 13 sleeping, and like the daughter caught him checking on her. Yeah, and it went downhill obviously from there. So it's like, okay, well, do you take away everything that man has done based on his final actions, or do you go, hey, he was a good person in spite of this? And again, guys, I don't have the answers. I think there are some things where you're just like, I don't think anyone's going out there and be like, you don't understand. Osama bin Laden did a lot of good things for people, or, I mean, you see it like I love Narcos on Netflix,
Right.
The police and the U.S. hate those motherfuckers. But the towns where those guys live love and adore them. Some out of fear, yes, but also because when your daughter was getting married, the drug kingpin would come down and say, "Oh, I hear your daughter's getting married. We'll cover it." Or hey, our trucks need pavement to be able to get in and out. This town is all dirt roads. We'll pave the whole roads. We'll provide and take care of these people. So to some people, they are amazing and people that help support the local community. Other people, they're terrorists. And I mean, look at the the dude from Sinaloa. You know, they couldn't keep him in a Mexican jail. He broke out twice, so they put him in U.S. prison now, where they're literally moving him. Like, I think they move him like on a weekly basis,
Jeez.
cells, so that no one knows exactly where he's at, so
Right.
they can't try to dig out. But, you know, again, the U.S. prosecutor has a list of, hey, here's everything that's terrible about this person. But if you ask people in his town, they'd have an equally large list. In
Right.
fact, they go back to his town, you know, they have him up, you know, next to Jesus. I mean, he's almost like martyr-like status there.
Wow.
This is, again, what happens when you don't go outside as a
Yeah.
kid. You get to watch a lot of these things, and then your brain kind of connects them all, you know, for you while you're talking in real time. But again, I don't have an answer. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, and to be clear, right? Because I also have a habit of putting these things out and not being like, hey, by the way, I've talked to you. If anyone has any issues with what I've talked about here and you think it's you, feel free to reach out. Also, I want to be clear. There is no anger or malice. I had a wonderful time last night. You know, it was not what I expected it to be, but it doesn't mean that we didn't have a wonderful time. We got to meet their child, who was a hoot, hilarious, had a great time. My friend and I that had the disagreement, we're still friends to this day, you know, and granted, he's maybe not the friend I thought he was, but I know exactly who he is, and I just understand when he doesn't meet what I think the level of expectation is, it's because of my expectation,
Right.
not because
So
of
now
his.
you have a different level of expectation
Right.
that you know you can count on.
Right. The problem
know.
is when you don't change that expectation, and then they keep acting the same way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, man, if your dog shits in the house and you don't teach them to shit outside the house, you can't get upset when they keep doing it. You're
Right.
like, why didn't you just learn that this was different? Why don't you do the thing I want you to do, even though you've never been able to do that thing ever, you know, in the first place? So, again, don't have the answers. Would love to know your thoughts and opinions. Please respond in the comment section. Hit reply to an email wherever you got this. While you're doing that, take a second to get, how many likes did, what's his face say we need? 50,000 likes?
Yes.
50,000
So,
likes is
you
what he
know,
said.
Smash that like button.
Yes, 50,000 times, according to him. You know, share this with your friends and let me know your thoughts. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about the situation, what you've encountered, and what you've done or haven't done to be able to address it, because maybe, just maybe, you've got a better way. All right, guys, we're off. We're going to a hockey game tonight. We're going to go check out the Vegas Knights versus the Rangers, which is going to be great. We got some touristy stuff to do, and then it's back to reality, back to life, if you will, in the 806 here in the very near future. Look for more updates and new episodes dropping each and every week, hopefully, for you to enjoy. Love to know your thoughts, and we'll see you on the next one.